Hi, and thanks for joining me. With this class get off to an awesome start, if I could tell you, you would no longer have to fight an unwinnable argument with your kids. That's what we're going to learn with Love and Logic. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jody Zuki. I am our family liaison, or also known as our parent mentor for Oglethorpe County Schools. I included some other resources in this Google Classroom that really explains what that all means.
So now, raise your hands if your kids never beg for things they don't need, never argue with you, never say it's not fair, and that kind of thing. So I'm looking for that hand that I never see. And you notice I didn't put my hand up either. But how would it be if we'd start this out and I'd give you a practical, really easy to use technique to kind of put a stop to all that begging, arguing, and complaining and so on, and back talk too? Would that be worthwhile, yes or no? Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what we need. Okay. Now, do you have any friends or relatives or neighbors who have this fantasy that someday they will be able to reason with their kids so well that those kids will actually say, wow, Mom, Dad, you know, up until now I've disagreed with practically everything you've said, but now that you state your case so eloquently, that makes so much sense. I am so sorry, like I'll never argue again, give me a hug. Life is just going to be a whole lot better around here. Has that ever happened on this planet? Do you think it ever will? But do you know people who have this fantasy that someday it will actually happen? And that maybe the 700th time they repeat something didn't really click in, but that 701th time, yeah. Okay, so what are we going to do at times like that? When the kids are saying, it's not fair, my friends don't have to, I'm the only one, you know. Well, I didn't grow up with this, so I had to learn it the hard way, but I had to learn that when that happens, and there's some back talk going on, I just need to go brain dead. And I found out I have to go brain dead. Why? Because if I don't, I start thinking. And if I start thinking, even if I clamp my jaws together really, really tight, words can actually squirt out between my teeth. And you tell me, what do the kids do with those words? They use them on you, right? Okay. So have to go brain dead, cut the words down to the absolute bare minimum, and the delivery soft. In fact, is it true that kids will do almost anything to get some emotion out of you? Yes or no? Yeah. Oh yeah. So we need to be really, really boring. As boring as we can possibly be when the kids start to argue. So how would that sound when a kid says, it's not fair? I know. Was that boring enough? Can you make it even more boring? Let's hear it. I know. Now, what can a kid do? There's only 2 words there. I know. What can he do with those? Probably get mad. Well, this is stupid. And since we're brain dead, what are we going to say? Let's hear it, everybody. I know. Now, should we have a little sarcasm in there? Or will that'll backfire, right? So let's hear it once more. Boring, drag it out. I know. Well, Mom lets us. I know. I'm the only kid in the whole school. I know. Everybody else has those. I know. They're only... Isn't it funny that kids today see that thing we used to call a dollar sign? Do you know what they think that is? It's an only sign. It's only $300. It's only right? But the answer is, I know. Well, didn't ask to be born into this crappy family in the first place. I know. You just had kids so you can make slaves out of them. I know. I'm the only kid in the whole high school doesn't get to go to Cancun for sex, drugs, and booze is because you're like last century. I know. And if you're talking to a teenager, you're probably getting a little eye rolling. Like, this is so lame. I know. And by the way, any of you have kids who roll their eyeballs? Yes or no? Yeah? Uh-huh. Would you like to, does that kind of drive you crazy? Yeah. Would you like to drive the kids crazy instead? Okay, experiment with this. We'll just throw this in for no good reason. Next time they roll their eyeballs at you, I want you to look at them kind of surprised like and go, can you see your brains when you do that? See, and then every time they start to roll their eyes, you can have fun. You can say, still looking for your brain? It's bound to be there. Keep looking. You'll find it, you know. But, you know, you're going to hear all kinds of things, but eventually you'll hear, well, this sucks. And the answer still is, I know. And how long can you keep that up, by the way? Forever, yeah. Now, is the kid going to let you keep that up forever? Or are they going to say something like this? Well, obviously, this adult is too skillful for me. What's the chance on that, huh? Or is it going to be, wait a minute. Manipulation level 1 not working. Now I'm going to have to go to level 2. What does level 2 sound like? You don't love me if you love me, right? Okay, ever hear that one? And would you like a response for that? I can't tell, yes or no? Yeah, okay. How about I know? No, too sarcastic, right? But I'm reminded of this woman who came to the Rocky Mountain Conference one time, and she's so excited, and she runs up to me, and she's going, Jim, you want to see my new tattoo? I don't know, where is it? She says, on my finger. I looked on her finger. First joint of her first finger. Little smiley face you see in those Walmart ads. I said, what's that doing on your finger? She said, oh, anytime my kid accuses me of not loving him, I just whip it out and look at it. Reminds me to grin. Now, why do you grin when a kid is giving you a hard time? Terrorizes them. That's why. They say, oh no, the adult's grinning. This may not be the adult's problem. If it's not the adult's problem, it's bound to become my problem. Yeah. I know some of the most skillful parents and teachers, when kids give them a hard time, they just grin. And pretty soon, don't be laughing at me. Just being friendly, yeah. But she had 2 more words on her finger. On this joint, she had the word nice, N-I-C-E. On this joint, she had the word try, T-R-Y. And she said, when my kid says I don't love him, I just whip it out and let's hear it, everybody. But let's see that big grin first. Oh, bigger yet. Let's see it. Nice try. Could you use that in a lot of situations? Let's try this one. Kid is coming home from school, and you're saying, where is your homework today? They don't give that anymore over at school. New policy. What's the answer? Nice try. How about, let's pretend we're teachers. Any teachers in the group? They're great. Okay, good for you. Let's all pretend we're a teacher. And I'm a kid in the class. Well, shouldn't have to memorize all these facts. They're irrelevant because I'm gifted. Nice try. Let's be a teacher again. Where are your homework papers today? My parents wouldn't allow homework last night. They had responsibilities for me. Nice try. How about this one? You can't do nothing to me. I'm in special ed. I'm protected by federal legislation. Nice try. Ever have fantasies about what you'd really like to say to a kid who... Yeah, okay. Aren't fantasies great? Yeah. But here's something you can experiment with. And that's the spirit with which we offer all these love and logic techniques. Not something you have to go home and do, but something for you to decide, would you like to run a little experiment? Because experiments are safe. If they go great, they're a great experiment. If they go south, they were a lousy experiment, and I'm still the wonderful person who was experimenting, right? Okay. Next time you get that you don't love me, we could experiment with, oh, that was a nice try. And then suddenly I remember something. Oh, by the way, did you know that when I was your age, I used to say that very same thing to my parents? And then we add, but it worked for me. Yeah, all right. Kid gonna give up or go to level 3? You're mean, I hate you. I know, nice try. Now, have you ever known a kid to go to level 4? I don't have to put up with this. I'm going to go live with Dad. I'm going to go live with my friends. I've even heard this one. Rather live on the street than in this prison. Like one for that? How about a loving one? A little slow response there. How about a loving one that'll blow the kid's mind at the same time? Now, are we okay that that's a metaphor? Oh yeah, ever since this PC movement, we have to be so careful about our words, right? But it's a metaphor. But we could experiment with, I'll love you wherever you live. Now, would that be a real, true statement? Absolutely, I'll love you. Let's practice that, how we would deliver that. I'll love you wherever you live. Now, have you ever known a kid to go to level 5 manipulation? This is a different kind of a kid. See if you recognize him. I'm sorry. I know I done wrong. I'll never do it again, I promise. Recognize that kid? Now, have you ever heard an adult respond like this? Are you sure? Now, have you learned your lesson? I hope so. Okay. If you've learned your lesson and you promise to be good, we'll give you one more. Yeah, we've heard that one before, right? Now, I'm going to ask you a question that I've asked too, and actually we know this number because we've calculated it at the office. Over 900,000 people in live audiences like this over the years. I've asked this question, and I want to see how you responded to it compared to all those other 900,000 people. Have we ever heard adults who say, if you've learned your lesson, we'll give you one more chance? Raise your hand if you've ever seen that work out well in the long run. To this day, not one hand. We know that doesn't work. Do we do it anyway? Oh yeah, we're Americans. Yeah, we find out what does not work and we intensify it. So what would we do instead? See if you could see yourself doing this one. Oh, I'm sure you have learned your lesson. And I'm sure you will be better. And what did I say? I just gave you some of the most powerful words you will ever use as a parent. And what did I say? Well, maybe more powerful than I know, because you can use it for everything that the kid does. Let's see how it works out. Not fair. And what did I say? This is really stupid. And what did I say? You don't love me. And what did I say? I'm going to live somewhere else. And what did I say? I'll never do it again. I know. And what'll I say? Okay. We got a technique to get started? Something to experiment with? Anybody feel like running out right now and trying it out on your kids? Thank you.
Before we learn more about putting an end to arguing, backtalk, and begging, let's hear from Dr. Charles Fay as he introduces us to the love and logic approach.
Can you imagine being raised by a parenting expert? Jim Fay, my father. I think that's why I became a psychologist, just to figure out what happened to me when I was a little kid. But fortunately, they weren't always really great at love and logic. When I was really young, they only had 2 skills, one apiece. Yeah. My father's was this: for crying out loud. Any of you raised with for crying out loud? Okay. And you still have no idea what it means? Now, my mother's her one skill came over from Eastern Europe, from the Carpathian Mountains of Eastern Europe centuries earlier. And it sounded something like this: if you keep acting up, gypsies come. Now, I'm curious, has anybody been raised by the gypsy thread in this? Okay, yeah. Well, would you like to start having more fun raising your kids? Yeah. Is that legal? Yes. Absolutely. Is that good for them? Yeah. It's great for kids to see their parents loving raising them. Isn't that important? Yeah. Because that's the ultimate message of, I love you. I adore you so much that I'm just having a blast raising you. And would you also like to know that by using just some simple practical things, you could up the odds that they'd make good decisions about big and important things like drinking and driving and dating and drugs and their educations and the type of nursing home that they put you in someday. Are those important decisions? Yeah. And that's what love and logic is all about. It's about simple stuff that ups the odds that kids will make good decisions when you're not always watching them. Yeah, when you're not hiding in the trunk when they're driving around the car and they're 16 years of age. Yeah. And, I got to use some of this love and logic stuff not too long ago. See, I have kids. Yeah, I have 3 boys. I have a 27-year-old boy, I have a 19-year-old boy, and I have a 5-year-old boy. I'm not sure how all that happened, but yeah. But it wasn't too long ago, and it was a day just like any other day, and I'm going out to our garage to get some things out of the trunk of the car, and I'm bending over, and I'm messing around in there, and I look over at the wall. And something caught my eye. I looked over there and I thought it looked strange. And sure enough, there was a hole in the drywall. And I thought, man, those termites are getting out of control. And I walked over there and I looked at it. And sure enough, the drywall was all pushed in. And I got a little bit closer. And I saw this little sneaker print. And at that precise moment, I'm realizing our 4-year-old has kicked a hole in the drywall in the garage. Now, I'm having to say to myself, you know what? You're one of those love and logic guys, yeah? And the neighbors might be hearing, and that means you're not supposed to have a major adult temper tantrum. Are you guessing that I wanted to have an adult temper tantrum? Do any of you ever want to have adult temper tantrums? Do any of you ever, like me, kind of give in to that urge and go ahead and have an adult temper tantrum, right? And I'm thinking, I'm not supposed to yell and I'm not supposed to scream, and because this first rule of love and logic says that you're supposed to set and enforce limits without anger, lectures, threats, or repeated warnings. Oh, that sounds so good on paper, doesn't it? Because I'm thinking, oh, great, how do you do that? I mean, let's get realistic. How do you do that when you have to go buy a whole big sheet of drywall and you have to cut it out and you have to screw it on the wall so it fits right in the hole and you have to putty it all up and wait for that to dry, and then you've got to sand it all down, and then you've got to paint it, and then and by the way, I grew up in a home where we did everything ourselves. Yeah, we never called a professional to come and do anything. We did everything ourselves. And so that's kind of the way I still live my life. I mean, I just pretty much anything breaks, I figure out how to make it work. And so I'm thinking about all the expense and all the time. And so what do? I storm into the house, and there's my sweet wife, Monica. And she looks at me and she says, "What's wrong?" And I said, you wouldn't believe what he did. He kicked a hole in the drywall out in the garage, and now, I have to buy a whole sheet of drywall, and I have to buy all the spackling compound, and I have to buy the paint, and I have to do all this stuff. And she looked at me and she said, you did it. I said, no, I didn't. She said, you kicked the hole in the wall. And I said, I did not. And she said, well, the reason I'm confused, honey, is that if Cody was the one who kicked the hole in the wall, why are you the one who has to pay for all the stuff? And it hit me right over the head, the second rule of love and logic. When a kid causes a problem, you hand that problem back in a loving way. And do you ever find yourself doing that, though? You know, the kid creates a problem, and then you fall in the trap of thinking you have to own the whole thing. Yeah. Isn't it a glorious thing to realize that you can hand that problem back in a loving way, and the child can learn? Yeah. So I went to him, and here he is. I look at him, and he's 3 going on 4, and I looked at him, and I said, wow. Yeah, you know, I noticed the hole in the wall. What was his response? None. No response. Yeah. Wow. What are you going to do about that? How are you going to get that fixed? What kind of response? Just like that, yeah. I said, well, in our family, when a kid creates a problem, a kid has to, fix the problem or solve the problem. What kind of response? Nothing. He's just looking at me glassy-eyed, you know. And so I said to him, I said, would you like to hear some ideas, you know, about how you can do that? He looked at me, he said, yeah. And I said, well, some kids decide to call up a contractor. You know, that's the name of the kind of person who fixes stuff like that. And they figure out how they're going to pay the contractor, you know, by selling some of their toys or maybe all their toys, or I don't know. Now he's starting to cry a little bit, right? Well, other kids decide that they're going to ask their dad if their dad can help them fix it, and they'll go down to the hardware store or the Home Depot and see if they can buy all this stuff, and they can pay for it by, you know, selling some of their toys and stuff like that, and doing extra chores. And now there's he's starting to dry up a little bit, you know, and he smiles and he says, "I'll tape it." Yeah, his idea is he's going to use Scotch tape to fix this. Now, isn't it tempting to look at the kid and say, that's never going to work. That was the worst idea I've heard of. But is he going to learn that more effectively if I tell him it's not going to work, or if he actually tries it and finds out that it isn't going to work? So here he is sitting on the floor in the garage with a roll of Scotch tape. And his little fingers are working the whole thing, you know, and it's just all getting crumpled up on falling on the ground. And now he's trying to get it to stick on the drywall, and the drywall's just pushing in. And pretty soon he's getting so frustrated and, dumb garage. And I looked at him and I said, oh, that is so sad. Yeah, isn't it tempting to say, I told you that wasn't going to work? You know, that's not the love and logic way, see? The love and logic way is we know that kids learn from experience, but they learn most effectively when we can provide empathy and love when they're experiencing the logical and natural consequences of their poor decisions. Well, it didn't work very well. And the next day we head off to the Home Depot. Oh, yeah. And we're going through the parking lot, and I'm holding his hand, his left hand. In his right hand, he has a Ziploc bag. What's in the Ziploc bag? His entire life savings. Yeah. So we get the cart and we go into the Home Depot and we get some drywall and we stick it on there. And then we get some spackling compound, we stick it on there. And we get sandpaper and we stick it on there. And I realized something. I learned something. Right then and there, I realized that it's a lot more fun to shop for stuff when somebody else is paying. Yeah. And so we head over to the checkout lane, and we find the perfect clerk. Nice woman, and He takes his Ziploc bag and he opens it up and he dumps it all out on the counter. She must have had kids. She was figuring it out really quick, yeah. And we're helping him count it all out, and he started crying. It broke my heart. I mean, the tears were actually dropping off of his cheek and onto the ground. And you know what I wanted to say to him? I wanted to look into his eyes and say, sweetie, you know this love and logic stuff that I'm using on you right now? It was Grandpa's idea. You keep your money, put it back in your pocket, I'll pay for it. And when we get home, we'll call Grandpa and you can tell him, Grandpa, you're mean. You ever been there where you just, see, holding him accountable isn't always an easy thing, is it? But I knew that he had to learn from this, and so we let the tears fall on the ground and the money go away, and it pretty much wiped him out. And we got back in the car, and we drove home, and the next day we started working on it, and I started getting pretty worried, though, because I kept looking over at him as we were working together, and he was smiling. He was having a good time. I'm thinking, wait a second, this could backfire on me. And well, it took quite a while for us to, get it all done, because there were times where we all had to dry and we had to wait, but we eventually got it all fixed up, and it looked okay. Yeah, it looked okay. And he really seemed to have a good time doing it, and that worried me. Yeah. It was about 2 months later, he brings it up. Yeah, he's in the back seat of the car. We're driving around. He says, Daddy, remember when I kicked a hole in the garage? I said, yeah, and I tilted the mirror down so I could see him. And I said, yeah. And he said, remember? And then we fixed it together? And I said, yeah, and he was smiling back there. And then he said, that was fun. I thought, oh, this is not good. And so I had to ask him, I asked him, I said, Cody, do you think you're going to do that again? And he got the most serious looking face. His little lip stuck out on the bottom a little bit. And he says, no, cost too much money. And I thought, yes, we're figuring that out. Right? And see, one of the benefits of love and logic is that we get to discipline our kids without losing their love. We get to discipline our kids in a way where, sure, they might be mad about it in the short term, but in the long term, we have a stronger relationship with them. And that's really what this is all about. Raising kids in a way where they can make great decisions, but when you're old and gray, you still have a great relationship with them. And even though my father is not old and gray yet, I still have a really great relationship with him, and that's why I'm here today. But as you learn more about love and logic, you're going to see that it's not just about one type of situation or one type of problem or one type of age level. It's not just about 4-year-olds who kick holes in drywall. Over the last 30 years, we've seen so many people from all around the world, different cultures, different religions, different life circumstances coming to us and talking about how they've used it in creative ways. Yeah, we've had people come up to us and say, hey, I'm using it on my husband. Yeah, because he acts like a child most of the time, I felt a little guilty about that one, but then I had a lady come up to me the other day and she said, I'm a single parent, and boy, it's tough, but I'm using this, and man, is it helping. Or I'm a step parent, and dealing with the kids trying to accept me into the family, and I'm learning that I can set limits in ways where they don't see me as evil. This stuff can work for me. And I had a lady come up to me and say, hey, I work at a maximum security prison, and I use it on the inmates. Yeah, and I have fewer flare-ups with them, or I'm using it on my elderly parents. Yeah, let that be a warning to Jim Fay. Yeah. Or we've adopted kids, or we have special needs children, and we're using it, and we're experimenting. And let's make sure we understand that word, experiment, experiment, experiment. We learn the same way that kids learn. We experiment, and sometimes things go well. We learn from that. Some things don't go so well. We tweak it a little bit. That's really the love and logic way. But when it comes down to it, love and logic it boils down to basic relationship skills. That's what love and logic is about. Basic relationship skills. And we've noticed that the people who are the most successful learning about these skills, they take it slow. And they experiment with just one thing at a time. And they listen to these stories that we're telling, and they allow themselves to giggle, and they allow themselves to relax, and they allow themselves to have fun with their kids. And are you ready to have a whole lot more fun with your kids? What are your thoughts? Thank you.
The love and logic approach is practical and it's fun. These visuals outline some of the many things we will be learning as we go through this series. So let's look at then. Putting an end to arguing, backtalk, and begging is so important that Jim started this program by giving you some practical tips. Let's rejoin him as he describes why we need to learn these skills first.
Last time I was in front of you here, we were talking about going braid knit when kids argue and so on. Why did we start out with that? Because no other technique we teach in love and logic will work if your kids can argue you out of this situation. If they can beg until you wear down, or if they can argue until you wear down. And what's the chance that you're going to go home, experiment with these techniques, and have your kids be really thankful that you went to a love and logic class? And say something like, "Oh, Mom, you've really upgraded your parenting skills. I'm so jazzed that you're taking that love and logic class. I just know that every week when you come back, it's just going to be so much better around here. And I know I'm going to grow up with more character. And I know I'm going to be able to think for myself. And oh, thank you. Give me a hug. I love that." Yeah. It reminds me of being in the airport in Cincinnati, Ohio. When I'm out in public, it's like Charles says, you almost have to be on guard and be a class act because, somebody's going to look over there and say, "Oh, yeah, look at Mr. Love and Logic now. Sure." But I'm hanging out in the airport and I'm behaving myself and we're waiting and there's a big crowd of people around here and suddenly I hear out of this crowd somebody say, "Hey, I know who you are. You're that Love and Logic guy. I see you on public television all the time." Well, people turn around, they're looking at me, but I'm feeling kind of proud, And she says, "And I've used your techniques." And my head is really getting big. And she says, "And they don't work." And by now, she's really got the crowd's attention, right? I said, "Well, tell me about that." She says, "Well, when I use them, my daughter just gets mad." And one of the guys in the crowd turned around and said to somebody else, "Must be working then, right?" Yeah. So don't go home thinking their kids are going to thank you for all of this for a while. The neat thing is they thank you later on. Because I don't know how many young people have come to my workshops and said, "My parents raised me with love and logic, and I was upset then, but I'm happy now." No, the other day, though, something different happened. Somebody came to a workshop and said, "You know something? My grandparents raised my parents with love and logic." And I thought, "Oh, no, been around a long time. Thank you."
Arguing creates a major hassle for us parents. Even more concerning is the effect it can have on our children long term. Let's learn more by reading Lessons Learned from a Little Arguing. You'll find this on page 5 in your workbook.
Is how we say this just as important as what we say? Yeah. It reminds me of a lady who came to one of my conferences and she says, I'm giving up on this love and logic stuff. And I said, really? And she says, well, I tell you what, every time I try to say, I love you too much to argue, my 2 daughters, they tell me that I'm being sarcastic. And I said, really? And she says, oh yeah, they're 5 and 11. And they say, Mom, you're being sarcastic. And I say, no, I'm not. And they say, yes, I am. Yes, you are. Well, no, I'm not. And, we go back and forth like that over and over again, and it's just not working. Now, is she saying the wrong stuff? No, or is it more about she's saying the right stuff maybe in the wrong way? Yeah, okay. So let's stop real quick, and I want to ask you some questions about these love and logic one-liners, the things we say when kids start to argue. Okay, first question is this, and you can yell out nice and loud, yes. Let's practice that. Here we go. Yes. Okay, or no if the answer is no. Let's hear that. No. Okay, so are those designed to get even with kids? You're not sure about that. Let's try that again. Are they designed to get even with our children? No. Okay. Are they designed to be used with anger or sarcasm? No. Will you end up in a nice sanitary nursing home if you use anger and sarcasm? No. Not a nice one. No. No. Are they designed to say to the kid, I'm the boss, you're not, get used to it? No. Are they designed to send this message, I love you enough to set some limits? Yes. And is that a pretty loving thing to say to a kid? Yes. Yeah. And are they also designed to say, I love you too much to waste time arguing with you? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, getting back to this lady, she said, I realized some things as we were talking. And she said, I realized that I had it all wired up in my head that these one-liners were designed to be a punishment or a consequence to set the kids straight. I said, no. They're just designed to help you stay out of the argument. And she said, and I also had this idea that if I used them, then the girls would never, ever argue with me again. And she said, I can't believe I thought that. She said, now I'm figuring it out. See, these one-liners are not designed to stop the kids from arguing. They're really designed to keep me from arguing with the kids. And I said, bingo! Yeah, it takes 2 to tango. And she said, but I figured out something else as we're talking. I said, what is it? She said, there is no way that I am ever going to be able to say, I love you too much to argue with you without being sarcastic. Now, I bet there's at least one person in this audience that's thinking the same thing. There is just absolutely no way I can say to my child, I love you too much to argue, or this is so sad, or whatever, without coming across as sarcastic. And should you feel bad about that? Absolutely not. See, the good news about love and logic is you get to figure out how you say it that makes sense to you, that fits your unique personality. Yeah, you get to tweak it so you don't feel like you're coming across phony. And I said, I have an idea for you. And she said, what is it? I said, I ran into a lady kind of like you. She just could not say that without being sarcastic, but she knew how to say this. And she decided she would say this every time the kids started to argue. Would you like to hear what this other woman said? Okay, she'd say this. That's it. Well, let's practice. Here we go. Now let all the air go out of your lungs when you do it. Okay? Well, this is stupid. Well, I forgot to take my medication. Well, I wouldn't have all these problems. Kind of relaxing, isn't it? Yeah. Could you imagine how much more relaxed you'd be on a daily basis if you got to say that over and over again? Oh, yeah. Yeah. See, there's two benefits of that. First of all, it's relaxing. The second is that when there is no air in your lungs, you can't talk. Yeah. And have you noticed what we've noticed? That the fewer the words we say when our kids are acting out, the more effective we become. Yeah, I'll say that again. The fewer the words we say when our kids are acting out, the more effective we become. She said, I think I could do that. I said, you got to email me and tell me how it goes. You know, she never emailed me. She called me. Yeah. She said, I did it, and it annoyed them so much. I said, it annoyed them? She said, yeah, I think they were annoyed because I wasn't. And is there anything that will annoy an arguing kid more than seeing you taking good care of yourself? Yeah, they got so annoyed. But now it's working. All I have to do is say, oh. And the 11-year-old stomps away. She says, oh, I know. But she said, listen to this. This is the best part. We were in the car the other day. Yeah, and they're in the back seat, and they're arguing with each other. They're just getting so snippy with each other in the back seat. They're going back and forth with each other. And the 5-year-old, she just turns to the 11-year-old, and she looks at her, and she says, And the 11-year-old came unglued. She said, don't use that stuff on me. Silence in the back seat. It was great. Yeah. Do we have to get really creative when we use these one-liners with kids, or is it better if we aren't? Yeah, thank you.
As you just read, the love and logic approach is intended to leave children believing that their parents are the most powerful and most loving people in their lives. The following visual reveals what happens when we nurture this type of relationship. You can also see this visual in page 10 of your workbook. So, for decades, parents all over the world have discovered that love and logic skills allow them to discipline their kids without losing their love and respect. Let's watch Jim as he describes how the words love and logic really can go together.
I was being interviewed on a radio show, and the guy announced me as the co-author of Parenting with Love and Logic, and then he turned to me and he said, love and logic, parenting with love and logic? He said, that's an oxymoron, isn't it? And he said, how in the world do you do that? Well, you know, we ought to talk about that just a little bit. The love in love and logic is the amount of love it takes to stand back and watch somebody make a mistake. Like I'm thinking about little Cody trying to put tape on the wall. It's kind of hard to stand back and watch him do that. And it's even harder to watch them live with the consequences and pay that money to the clerk and so on. But that's where the logic comes in. It's not something that we give to kids in the form of words. It's what goes on in their head when they're dealing with the mistake that they made and finding out that nobody else is going to take the blame for that. It's like I was watching you as you all came in today, and I noticed something because I was looking in your eyes. They look pretty clear. Looks like most of us didn't go out last night and drink a half-gallon jug of tequila before we went to bed, right? And why is that? Did it once, that's why, yeah. I woke up with profound new wisdom the next morning saying, ooh, I'm not sure that was a good idea, right? And isn't that where life's real important learning comes from? You know, I think an example of that is years ago, when I was a principal of the school, I used to leave every Friday night and do a job for Learning Magazine as a consultant. I flew from Colorado to New York and went out on Long Island, and we'd have workshops on Saturday and Sunday. And then at the end of the day on Sunday, they would race me back to Kennedy Airport, put me on the airplane. I would appear back here on Monday morning like I'd never been anywhere, which was good because the superintendent wasn't real big on us coming back exhausted on Monday mornings or not being there or whatever. And after about 15 times of doing that, one day they said, Jim, we can't drive you back to the airport, but we've got this rental car, and we're wondering if you'll drive that back to Kennedy Airport. Could you do that? And I said, sure. They said, do you need some instructions on how to get there? We've got some. Oh, no, I've been there a whole bunch of times. I can get there on my own. Not a good decision, you know? Have you ever discovered that driving there takes a certain kind of responsibility, and just sitting there vegging out in the passenger seat, that's a whole lot different, right? So, but I'm sure I know how to do it, and I take off for Kennedy Airport. It isn't long before I'm lost. I can't find anything. Now, living in Colorado, it's kind of easy. If you're lost, you look to the mountains, that's west, right? And then if the sun is shining, you can kind of orient that. You can't see those mountains from Long Island. And it was a cloudy day and you couldn't see the sun. And I'm hopelessly lost, and pretty soon the roads are looking like spaghetti. And I'm thinking, oh my golly, I'm lost out here. I'm never going to get back for my plane. And then I think something worse. No, I'm going to be out here till I run out of gas. And then I hope that the cops find me before the gang guys find me. And I am now feeling pretty down in the dumps when out of this fog looms this sign that says Kennedy Airport. It's just like the kids say on accident, I'm finding Kennedy Airport. And I drive up there, and I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. And now I can see Kennedy Airport. And Budget Rent-A-Car, there's Budget Rent-A-Car. But it's on the other side of that highway, on the other side of that interchange, on the other side of that fence. Can't get there from here. Made a great discovery about rental cars. Did you know that rental cars will go over a curb a whole lot better than your own personal car? They will also go up, down ramps and down up ramps. And I got my own way out there to Budget Rent-A-Car, and I dropped that car off. I got out to the airport, up to the ticket agent just in time to miss my airplane. I'm thinking, oh no, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to be in trouble with the superintendent. I won't be back. And then I said the stupidest thing I'd ever said. I said to this ticket agent, I'm sorry I missed your airplane. And lo and behold, he says to me, no problem. And I said, what do you mean, no problem? I've been teaching that to teachers for 2 days. That means no problem for you, major problem for me. You know? He said, can you sleep on the airplane? I said, no, I've never learned to sleep sitting up. That's one thing I can't do. And he said, well, that's really sad. He said, but you know, if you don't mind, he said, I've been looking at the schedule here, and if you don't mind riding on 3 different airplanes, he said, I could get you back by 5 o'clock. Is that tomorrow afternoon? He said, no, that's in the morning. I said, I'll take it. Oh, it was great. Except that night I get to see Detroit and Cleveland. But Cleveland first, then Detroit, then Denver. And I get back to the airport. It's starting to get light. It's 5 o'clock. Now, 6 o'clock, I'm back home. And I make another bad decision. I'm going to go to bed for an hour and get an hour's worth of sleep. Then I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to work. Now, I'm one of these people, if I take a 20-minute nap, it takes 4 hours to wake up. So I said to my wife, wake me up in an hour. I got to get to work. I can't miss this day. And she wakes me up. I don't know if I went through stoplights or anything, but I got there to school. And if I hadn't been the principal where I could go in the office, shut my door, and say I was in consultation, I would not have made it. But you know, while I was in there, I made a great decision. No more rental cars. Oh yeah, if they want me to consult, they drive me around. If they miss the airplane, no problem. Big problem for them. They can pay another day's consulting fee, and I'm going to have a whole lot better time out of the whole thing, and I haven't missed another airplane since then. But where did all that wisdom come from? That little bit of wisdom? Yeah, from the luxury of having a chance to make that mistake early in my career, right? Yes. And is this true? The road to wisdom is paved with mistakes, yes or no? Okay. And what do you want for your kids? Lots and lots of little mistakes. Those little mistakes that are life-threatening. And then what else do we want? And we hope that this course gives you that. The courage to sit back, be really sad for them genuinely, and then hold their feet to the fire. And wait a minute, is that another metaphor? That's another metaphor. Okay, thank you.
The words love and logic really can go together. The next visuals that you see here review how Jim explained it in the video. These are also included on page 10 of your notebook. Thank you for joining me as we completed Module 1. This visual shows what we'll learn in our next session, and you'll find it on page 10 of your workbook.